Welcome! This video contains an introduction, an interview so you can gain deeper understanding of the subject from spirit level, and a group frequency calibration so you can start to clear the frequency distortion patterns around this topic. Enjoy!
Hi everyone, this is Cheong, and I'm here with my co-host Dennis Kelly. As with the feminine, there is a growing discussion about what it means to be masculine. In spirituality, the awakened masculine is often portrayed as effeminate, which can be alienating for a lot of men who wish to express their authentic selves. Today we're going to be discussing a new paradigm that I call the Transcendent Masculine, which is in alignment with a higher order and which rises above the distortion patterns of the old paradigm. After the discussion, we're going to wrap it up with a group frequency calibration to help you start to clear distortion patterns around this topic so you can continue to accelerate forward. Let's get started. Dennis?
I have to tell you, Karen, it's really quite a confusing time for men.
Yes.
In a previous podcast, we talked about the paradigm shift that's happening for women. And, you know, that in a lot of cases is like a 180. And so when it comes to relationships, it gets a little confusing for the man because the old paradigm is, you know, that's how they grew up and that's how they were taught. And now what? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of confusion on both the masculine and the feminine sides. And I think for the masculine, what's happening right now is, first of all, there's a lot more freedom. Right, for men to express different things than they could before. And that's really lovely. And I think that for men in my generation, a lot of times they were raised by mothers who saw the masculine as bullying, aggressive, and overly authoritarian. So they wanted to make sure their boys were not jerks when they grew up. And so they just like when the females now have these masculine frequencies running through them because they have to man up in order to compete and be strong and to be taken seriously. What happened with a lot of men within my generation is that they had this thread of the feminine running through them, like a little too much of the feminine running through them, and they've lost their way with regards to how can I be more in my masculine. And they want to, but they're not really sure how without being a jerk. Right? Because that's the paradigm of the masculine male. It's kind of, you know, this authoritarian figure who doesn't really care about anyone else and kind of belligerent and kind of a buffoon. I'm overgeneralizing, but that tends to be, unfortunately, the overall scope of what we think of when we think of the masculine, right? In its masculine. The Transcendent Masculine is rising above that. It's of a higher order beyond these distortion patterns having to do with power, authority, control. It rises above that. The way it does that is because, again, of the same internal strength and the same spirit completeness that I was talking about with the Transcendent Feminine happens within the masculine. As a result, what happens is a very natural consequence is an authority that comes from a higher level of resonation. It's natural. You don't have to force the authority. You don't have to bully people to show that you're strong or that you're powerful. You don't have to slap anyone with like how tough you are. It literally emanates from you. And as the Transcendent Masculine even walks into a room, authority is established, even if he's not even talking. Because he has what I call spiritual mass. He has enough magnetism because he's in his masculine without apology, at a higher level resonation, and as a result, the authority that he carries is of a higher order, right? It's not from a construct of the human mind of like what is manly, right? And it doesn't need to control. It doesn't need to assert authority. It just is. And so what's wonderful about that is that that allows the Transcendent Masculine also to be very authentic in expression. So it's totally okay for that male, the Transcendent Masculine, to have emotion, right? It's okay. Whereas in the old paradigm, that would be considered weak or inappropriate or whatever, whatnot, right? And there are now, this is now distortion that I've seen in the masculine, where there's a tendency towards over-emotion, almost like because of the feminine running through. So there's like a tendency towards drama sometimes in men, which I've noticed, and that's a feminine pattern. So it rises above all that distortion. So he has an emotion, he expresses it, He has it, it moves on. You know, it's not this lingering thing that happens, and neither is it suppressed. So it's just clear, right? It's an expression of the masculine, whatever that masculine expression of that emotion is, without needing to linger in it, without needing to suppress it, without needing to control it, being okay with others' expression of emotion, that type of thing. So that's really wonderful.
It sounds like the process, whether it's a man or a woman, is basically the same. As far as, you know, you've got a person, and they start to become aware, and they start to awaken, and they work on releasing these distortions, which allow them really to move into their true essence.
Yes.
So the process, you know, the outcome can be quite different, but the process is basically the same for the men and the women.
Yeah, and what I'd like to also distinguish is I'm talking about the masculine and the feminine. So if you're in a male body and you identify more with the feminine, and you move into the transcendent feminine, that's okay. That's okay, that's your expression. You'll have masculine qualities within you, but it'll be a kind of a different mix.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I just want to remove it from man, woman. We're going masculine.
That rigid definition.
Yeah, because some
a man's man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A woman's woman.
Yeah.
So there are some men where they have more feminine, like that's what they identify with.
Yeah.
And so as they move towards an expression of the transcendent feminine, which actually has for them more of the transcendent masculine mixed within them, it's still this beautiful, it's just, for them, it's a different mix of whatever that proportion is. But it's still an expression of both, really. It's actually more of an expression of both the transcendent feminine and the transcendent masculine through them, because they're experiencing both. Does that make sense? Because they're in a male body. Yeah.
So I remember in our previous discussion when we were talking about women, and you mentioned they lose that desire to control because they've lost the fear, because they remove the distortions.
Yeah.
So is that also true for men?
Yes.
As they evolve?
Yes. And so I love that question. Thank you for asking it. So yes, so for men, it's slightly different, because men, at least for the masculine that I have seen, they have less, the fear pattern is different, right? Yeah. Because you are less physically, you're stronger physically than we are, and have also been in a position of power for longer. So for them, it's a fear of not being, it's more about self-worth and having authority without needing to oppress other. So it's a different, so there's a movement away from fear, but it's not a fear of like security or safety in the same way that it happens for the feminine, but it's more about having your authority taken at its face. You know what I mean? Like, it's not quite the same fear as what women experience. It's different. And also less of a need to control others, and also less tolerance for being controlled, which is great. Both happen. As you said, for the feminine, it also happens within the masculine as well.
So in society in the past, as a man, you were kind of given that expectation that you control your partner.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so all that is shifting.
Yes.
And there's no desire
Yes.
for the man to control the woman, or vice versa.
Yeah, and I would say that the masculine, that distortion pattern in the masculine has to do with a need to feel superior, important, powerful. It has to do more with power than it has to do with fear. Does that make sense?
Suppress you
to feel strong.
So,
So
I've
that's
got this.
so it's not really about fears. It's a different kind of fear. It's like, I'm not worthy of being powerful in myself, so I have to dominate someone else in order to feel powerful, right? It's a kind of a bit of a shift, but that moves away, because what happens is that need to dominate, oppress, control, abuse drops. It's no longer relevant when you become complete and whole yourself. Like, why do you need to? It's not even required. And so, and what I love about that, as you said, is that there's no tolerance for anyone abusing me, right? Which is lovely. And so it's a clearer version of the masculine, which has to do with, it is really a wonderful thing to watch, because what happens is that men rise in service. What I've noticed in the transcendent masculine, as a natural consequence, is they serve, like, their higher level of service, higher level of contribution. It just happens. They want to provide that. right? And it's not required. It's not like they need to. If not, then they don't feel good. I'm not trying to say that. It's just as a natural happening. They just want to be of more service. And if it's not like required, then they won't. But they want to offer it more, which is really a wonderful thing.
As I look around and the type of work that you're doing and others are doing, there's a greater propensity that those involved are women.
Yep.
And so is there going to be a catch-up game for the men? Or how,
Yeah.
How, do you see this kind of...
Yeah. So I'll answer that in two ways. So one, what's really wonderful is that for men in my generation and a little bit younger, for the younger generation, it doesn't really matter. The males are interested. They're like, because they have more freedom. It's really sort of my generation older, right? People in their 40s older that have more binding with regards to what's allowed. Women tend to be more open, receptive. They are allowed to be more intuitive, have more feeling, move on that.
Yeah.
Men have it too, but it's a little bit more discouraged. It has to be a gut instinct, or they're not allowed to have it, really. So women tend to move first in this arena because they're feeling something and they're moving towards it. For men, sometimes they need a little bit more proof. They have to trust you more. There needs to be more rapport established, which is fair. They're like, I just need to know. I mean, are you full of hot air, or is this actually going to work, right? And so that's just the masculine. So I would say that yes, there is a little bit of catch up, but I feel like it's funny. When the masculine comes on board, it's like full on. So it's not hard to catch up. The engagement takes a little longer, is what I would say. Often.
It's really quite fascinating when you talk about these paradigm shifts, because it's real.
Yeah.
And it's happening.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to stop it or resist it, God bless you.
Yeah.
And so I've heard you talk about the wave, and I've heard you talk about, these energy, cycles that we go into. And so it's really wonderful for both sides of the ledger to open up and to come to this.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful because as the transcendent masculine comes into play, it allows for the transcendent feminine to rise even more. Oh. It's both. Yeah, they both help each other. This is like union. This is union happening.
That's a good point.
So it's funny because there were a lot of women who are like, come on, men, because they're looking for partners. They want somebody who can match them. And I would say that what's lovely is that the men who are embodying the transcendent masculine are really a gift to a lot of women, even if they're not in partnership to them, because women see them or perceive them or feel them, and they're like, what is this here? I don't know what this is, but I prefer this. I want this. Yeah. And it allows them to entrain to the possibility for the transcendent masculine, to model it for their children, for their fathers, for their husbands, like whatever. But it's this really wonderful gift because they see what is possible. So it's lovely. And so that's all I'm going to say. And all those masculine traits of that we think of as very old paradigm, like honor, honor and service. Yeah. Those are quite male, actually, masculine. I'm not going to say male, masculine in their essence. And what's lovely is that as you move into the transcendent masculine, it comes from a higher order of honor, and it's really magnificent to witness. And it's not like it disappears. It just comes from a higher level. And so to see that clarify and come from a higher level of what is honor for the transcendent masculine and what that means and what he'll stand for and what he'll provide and protect as a result is really amazing. Yeah.
It's exciting to think about the relationships of the future, that the word control kind of drops away, and the word support comes to be.
Yeah, and I would exactly. And what I would say is there's this phenomena that I call distorted love. I'm actually going to do a deep dive on this. where it looks like love and closeness, but it's actually control. So it looks like a lot of like closeness and togetherness and like, right? But it's very binding. Yeah. So, and we've all had this with, either with parents or with partners or even siblings or whatever it is. But it's quite insidious. And that's what can happen when you have distortion in the masculine and feminine as well, right? You have this need to control, which is a different way of abuse also, right? Because control and abuse, there's a very fine line between these two things, right? So anyway, so yes, there is these patterns of distorted love, and we can, as we rise up to the transcendent feminine and the transcendent masculine, there's no need for that because we're free. I don't need you to love me. I don't need it. And therefore, it's a gift when we do get to, but I don't need it. And so therefore, it allows you both to not need to control the other. Yeah.
I can't help but think that another factor that's going to drop away with time is jealousy.
Yeah.
Because if I'm truly complete within myself, whether man or woman, I would love to have this tremendous relationship. Yeah. But if it doesn't work out or whatever that is,
it's okay.
So be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, jealousy is really a form of ownership in a way, right? Because you're trying to control the other person because you think you can possess them, which is an interesting distortion of self-worth and wanting to, right, feel good about oneself by controlling another. So yes, jealousy, envy, those types of things drop away. They just become irrelevant. Yeah. At the higher order, those emotions become irrelevant, which is really awesome. It's really awesome. It's a really exciting time.
So the relationships of the future just are so different and so exciting.
Yes, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, and what we can do as we come together is really buoy not only ourselves up, but those around us, just even in our beingness, because we model like what it is that is possible.
And to think that modeling is going on for the children and the grandchildren. Yeah. It's like, wow. Yeah. What is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Which means that they can see what it's like to not have a relationship with binding.
And feel it.
Yeah.
And just be part of it.
Yeah. And it's really joyful.
Yeah.
Because there is no binding. That's really awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Karen, could you help me? I hear so often when I look at your video or your website, GFC. Exactly what is that?
A GFC is a group frequency calibration, which looks a lot like a guided meditation on a particular topic. And what I'm doing is I'm helping you to remove the distortion patterns of that particular topic. And because you're coming together as a mastermind in a group to connect to pure source even more and to clear the distortion patterns of this particular topic, what happens is a tremendous amount of momentum starts to happen because of the energetic of the entire group, and each individual is able to move faster and ascend higher than they could have on their own.
Welcome everyone to the Group Frequency Calibration on the Transcendent Masculine. Bringing your awareness to the space between your heart and your throat. And as you bring your attention, awareness, focus to this space in your body, we're going to take a single breath together. Inhaling, holding your breath in for as long as you think you can. And then whenever you're ready to release all the air out of your lungs at your own time, you don't have to follow the sound of my voice, releasing all the air out of your lungs and holding out your exhaled breath for as long as you think you can. And for those of you with a very long breath, you may want to pause this recording until you complete your breath and then restart. For the rest of us, when that single breath is complete, bringing your attention, awareness, focus to your solar plexus, between your belly button and the base of your sternum. Breathing normally when you arrive here. And as we're waiting for the mastermind to gel, please note that I'm working on you at the group and the subgroup level, and that I'll be making noises on my end. So you'll hear me exhale sharply, yawn, hum, and that's just my way of removing the distortion patterns at this current time. And what is happening is that I'm working more and more in silence when I'm working with the higher level frequencies, especially when we're working in the transcendent paradigm, okay, because we're accessing much, much higher frequencies to be in the consciousness of this higher level or new paradigm. So just know that if you don't hear anything on my end, it's not because I've gone somewhere. I'm just working in silence. Good. Now the mastermind has gelled. Let's go ahead and ask ourselves the following question. How can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And that question again is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And as you ask yourself that question, please imagine, sense, feel, or become aware of a brilliance deep, deep within your body. That starts to become brighter, more shimmery, as it expands out through all of your cells and eventually radiating out through the pores of your skin. And on my end, I'm working at source level to increase your capacity, your natural capacity to take in a higher bandwidth or a broader bandwidth of pure source frequencies. Yep. Really nice. Keeping your attention in your solar plexus. All right. So this distortion pattern has to do with a couple of, well, there's two actually distortion patterns. One is around confusion, around the expression of the masculine from a higher order. Okay. And the second is a distortion pattern of low self-worth or non-deserving of embodying that, whatever that is, okay? Or whatever you feel like that is based on what you've heard, okay? So let's remove the confusion. And of course, the transcendent masculine is going to be expressed uniquely through you. So it's going to look different for each of you. So removing the confusion first. And addressing this distortion pattern next of the low self-worth, non-deserving, so that you can give yourself permission to embody this, if you choose to. So, helping you with this next, keeping your attention, please, in your solar plexus. Good. Now bringing your attention, please, between your pubic bone all the way up to your heart space, as if you were to draw a line through the center of your body from between these 2 points. Yep. So this has to do with the distortion around honor. Okay. So honor is a very masculine trait, and it's very distorted at this particular point in time. So this has a lot of overtones with regards to religion and lineage and culture to some degree. But fundamentally, the frequency of honor is very much part of, or at least a clear frequency of honor without the distortion is part of the transcendent masculine. So, and it's honor from a higher level, right? More from in alignment with pure source and your higher selves. So without the construct of the humanness. So we're going to remove these distortions around honor. So this is a pretty intense set of frequencies. So we'll get as much as possible. So definitely the first layer, possibly another. So just breathing deeply in that center line between your pubic bone and your heart space. And for those of you who have a challenge with the word honor, you can use the word integrity. Good. And now focusing on that same space between the pubic bone and the heart space. This has to do with the distortion patterns of control and power. Okay. So it is both ends of the spectrum, okay, because, and I'm talking about, so this is quite a complicated set of distortion patterns because it runs through lineage, it runs through culture, it runs through religion, okay, so it's a very large bundle of distortion patterns. I'm talking about it as if it's a single thing, but it's not. And it has to do with control, and abuse. So whether you control and abuse others, your lineage has in the masculine, okay, and or through religion or through culture, it exists. And I mean power over other forms of the masculine that were considered weaker, and also over the feminine. So that's what I mean by control or power over other. And on the other end of the spectrum, being controlled by the feminine or other forms of masculine that were more dominant. Okay, so it's both ends. So it's the same frequency, just opposite ends of the spectrum. Both exist here. Now, in the transcendent masculine, because it is complete and whole in and of itself, and it is of a higher order, there is no need to oppress for power. It is simply not required because it is being fueled by pure source and comes from within. So there's no need to dominate or suppress or control. Okay? And power, in terms of an external outward movement to control something, is no longer needed because you are self-generating the highest form of power. And therefore, instead of power, in terms of outward press, you have more of a magnetism and a natural authority because you are of a higher resonating frequency. Hopefully that makes sense. So as I've been talking, and as I continue to work now in silence, because this is a very, let's call it intense, bundle of frequencies, and to pull up to this higher order will take some doing. So just being aware of this center line and breathing normally. And please note, you will be tempted to have your mind wander, or your mind will be tempted to wander, is what I'm suggesting. If it is, please be mindful in bringing it back to that center line because of the intensity of these distortion patterns. And the more you do this, the deeper and faster we can release these patterns within you and your lineage. Okay. So, continuing. Very nice. Bringing your attention to your heart space. All right. So this has to do with authority. Okay. Now there is a subgroup of you that that rebels against authority. There's another subgroup of you that is afraid of authority, and there's another subgroup of you that wants authority. And so there's a lot of stuff around authority here. So this particular frequency is about a higher level of authority without oppression. So authority usually implies an oppression, right? The person in power oppressing those around them that are less empowered, okay, or weaker. So when I'm speaking of the transcendent masculine, the authority simply comes from the higher frequency level that you embody. And because it is coming from the highest source possible, so pure source, coming from an internal strength from within, which is from your connection to pure source, what happens is it's a natural authority, meaning people start to turn to you to lead. People start to turn to you for advice, for direction, for your opinion, that type of thing. And it's not because you're trying to force them into submission to you. It's simply because they naturally turn to you for direction or leadership because of this authority from a higher level place. So we're going to remove all these distortions with regards to authority, and there are many, just as there are with control, and then amplify the authority of the transcendent masculine. This is the final thing we're going to do in this particular GFC, because of course this is quite a large topic. So bringing your attention to your heart space. And there is a subgroup of you that's quite large that has the frequency distortion of non-deserving or low self-worth when it comes to having or wielding authority. Don't forget that this is from a higher order, but we need to remove this distortion pattern so that you can embody it or allow it, or both. Very nice. Bring your attention now, please, to your solar plexus. Just working on your pain bodies a bit to integrate them, since there's so much shift. Taking a deep breath in, holding it for a second or two, and then releasing it with some sound, like ah. Nice. So I'm going to leave you in this space for as long as you'd like, and I look forward to meeting you on the next GFC.